now Republican Congressman Mike Garcia from Santa Clarita, Republican who was just in the border or at the border. Congressman, welcome back. What'd you see?
Thank you, Alex. Well, I certainly didn't see what the President of the United States is claiming. I mean, our southern border right now is certainly not secure. I saw about 1/3 of the 18,000 kids that Bill was referencing just in El Paso alone. One facility with 10 tents that had about 5,500 kids aged between 12 years old and 18 years old. These are squalid conditions. Large tents with about 1,000 cots in them in a piece. And this is not good for these kids. These kids are being released after about 25 to 45 days into states around the nation, into households where they're not actually vetting the sponsors. There's no confirmation that the folks we're releasing these kids to are actually related to the sponsors that are claiming them. They're doing Google searches and Google Map searches to make sure that those houses exist, but not much more due diligence after that. And you know, it was heartbreaking to see. I saw an 8-year-old little girl escorting her 3-year-old brother in this Border Patrol facility. And I have a 4-year-old and I have a 14-year-old, and I'm a first-generation immigrant myself. My father's from Mexico, and it's just heartbreaking to see this happen in front of us. The only thing I can think of on the flight home yesterday was this is our national policy when it comes to immigration right now is similar to putting an ice cream truck in the middle of a minefield. We're literally tantalizing these unaccompanied minors to come into our country, and they're actually being exposed to just horrendous conditions, and the dangers before they arrive here are unimaginable with not only the trafficking, but also being used as sex slaves, drug mules, and just surviving those desert conditions is just brutal.
What do you suggest happens? How do you handle that? What's the solution?
Well, I think a lot of the policies were already in place in the last 4 years. To be honest, the last administration did do it right. This president needs to unequivocally state to the entire world that our nation has a process for coming here legally. We are a nation of immigrants, but we're also a nation of law and order, and we have a process to come here. When he doesn't do that, he's encouraging folks to come here illegally. We need to get more federal judges down to the border right now in order to adjudicate the remaining cases that are open out there. And we absolutely do need to secure this border. It can be done. There's ways to physically secure this border with not only a barrier system, but also with the right technology, and then to give our Border Patrol agents the resources that they've been asking for, frankly, for the last 20 years that we haven't been providing them. They are currently understaffed in ideal conditions, and right now in the midst of a pandemic and record-breaking crossings to the tune of 900% increases, as Bill mentioned, they can't do their jobs right now. And it starts at the top. The problem with our southern border right now has nothing to do with the Northern Triangle or other countries. It starts in the Oval Office, and this president needs to recognize that this is in fact a crisis. It's not good for the kids coming here, and it's certainly not good for our nation. This is going to become a bigger security and humanitarian problem before it gets better.
But, you know, we do have an asylum system, and the people in Bill's story were doing the legal thing. They turned themselves in. That's the process, to go through asylum. And there are people that are going to say, if the last administration is the model, that they separated kids from their parents, some of whom are still separated, and that was cruel, inhumane, and not following the law. What do you say to that?
Yeah, let me address both of those issues. So first of all, the vast majority, greater than 96% of the unaccompanied minors and people who are coming here illegally are actually not claiming asylum. They're claiming they have sponsors here, and they are receiving court dates to come back and adjudicate whether those sponsorships are valid and start going through the legal process. Almost all of those folks never do come back for their court dates. So that's thing one. If it's a genuine asylum case, and I did see a few of those down there, I think that's a valid process. We need to continue to have that. We need to look at other nations, such as Afghanistan, where we're about to see a lot of refugees needing help. We should support those refugees. As far as the other thing, when I visited the border in Arizona about 2 years ago, just outside of Yuma, these families that they were separating, they actually did not separate kids from parents unless it was found that the parents actually weren't the parents of that child. So that's why we need to go down there. That's why politicians need to take the time to look at the data, understand the facts, talk to the people on the border who are processing folks, and understand what's really happening, and not just reading social media or hearing the political speak coming out of some of our politicians.
All right, well, the other big issue, of course, is gun violence. We want to get your reaction to some remarks from Governor Gavin Newsom. Let's go ahead and play that from the mass shooting in San Jose today.
But it's time to deal with the endemic before this pandemic of gun violence, the pre-existing condition that somehow sort of pushed aside last year, but now has raised its ugly head again this year. And wake up to this reality and take a little damn responsibility, all of us, to do a little bit more and a little bit better this time and move beyond the platitudes and the usual rhetoric that tends to mark not just these moments, but the aftermath of these moments as all of you go away and this fades out of view, and then we rinse and repeat someplace else in this country.
Your thoughts?
Look, I don't agree with Governor Newsom very many times, but I think he's right. I think where we disagree is maybe on the solutions. I come from a district where we had unfortunately, a school shooting at Saugus High School about a year and a half ago. We lost 2 precious young teenagers. I think he's right. We've got to pay attention to this and get to the causal factors. But we have some of the strictest gun control laws in the nation already here in California. And I don't think that that's a panacea. I think we do need to look at the mental health side of this. We need to keep a database, frankly, and educate Americans in the wake of these tragedies. Let's not forget what happened. Let's not forget about the lessons learned, what went wrong, what indicators and telltales did we have on a mental health perspective. Because when we share that information with the entire nation, and you guys know I was a former naval aviator, and every time we had a mishap, we would actually create a mishap board, and it was required reading for every pilot before they went flying to figure out where the mistakes were made, what mitigating and aggravating factors there were. And I think we can actually start mitigating this a little bit better as a nation, but we've got to keep paying attention, and it can't just be a headline for a day or two.
And to that point, the idea of learning from the mistakes of the past so they don't happen again is the reason that some are saying we need a January 6th commission to learn from what happened on that day so we don't repeat them. Democrats and many Republicans proposed the idea of a bipartisan commission that would be equally split between both sides. 35 Republicans supported that in the House. You did not. Why not? Why not support the idea of a January 6th commission?
I had a few issues with the bill. First of all, I read every word of it myself. It was not going to be bipartisan. There was language in there that would have effectively led to all of the staff members who were driving the agenda being only from one party. The other thing is we already have active investigations going on in the Senate. So I think we need to allow those investigations to move forward. And this particular commission would have actually slowed those investigations down and interfered with those processes. The other issue that I had with it is it didn't open the scope broadly enough, frankly, to really understand not only what happened on January 6th, but what were the intel failures leading up to January 6th. We had evidence of these rioters coming to the Capitol a couple of days before. We did nothing. We had another Capitol Hill police officer by the name of Officer Evans die on April 2nd in another brutal attack. That wasn't part of this investigation. So first of all, it's not bipartisan. Second of all, the scope wasn't correct. There's ongoing investigations that will get the answers that we're looking for. And frankly, I think the American people want members of Congress to actually do their job and start legislating rather than debating what happened in the past. We need to hold those people accountable, those who broke in, that caused the damage that led to the deaths of too many folks. They need to be personally and individually held accountable, and they will. The process is taking place before us.
All right, Congressman, thank you so much for sharing your views. Tomorrow night, Democratic Congressman Adam Schiff will share different views, I presume, but we appreciate your perspective. We'll be right back.
Yeah. Thank you, guys.